Torres. I am one of the people that became with the idea of creating Boricua Vota, which has, I just heard from Alan that he used it in his campaign here in Boston, in Massachusetts, which is like a good surprise, because the idea was to create like an image and that everyone can, take it and use it for any campaign, and that was the whole idea. So, and today we are going to talk about local engagement and empowerment. So, today we have 3 people from Massachusetts, and I'm going to take an opportunity to participate as well and talk a little bit about Florida, the experience in Florida, and just to give a little bit of different flavor. But let's start with Gladys Franco, Vice Chair of Puerto Rican Cultural Center. Gladys.
Actually, I'm the former Vice Chair of the Puerto Rican Cultural Center. I'm currently a board member for the Resistance Center for Peace and Justice.
I used to be a member there.
Chair of the Migration Advocacy Committee, and in that role I have been able to support the migrant community in Western Massachusetts in building community coalitions in Springfield, in East Hamden, and Greenfield to pass what we know as the Welcome Community Trust Ordinance, or Safe Community ordinances in each of those communities, with the goal of protecting the civil rights of the migrant community. And the civil rights of all of us, really. And this past summer, I was one of the people who, in Springfield, in Western Massachusetts, organized the Boricua Solidarity movement in solidarity with the protests in Puerto Rico. So we held a few protests in Springfield, and also had the opportunity to meet with Representative Richard Neal, U.S. Congressman in Springfield, as well as in Washington, most recently on September 18th, as part of the Taking Action for Puerto Rico lobbying day. So we met with Chuy Garcia, we met with Representative Neal, Joe Kennedy, who's running for the Senate seat against Markey. But most importantly, that meeting with Neal again to reinforce the things that we are looking for to do, not just for the Puerto Rican community in the archipelago, but also for the diaspora, right? For the 9 million Puerto Ricans that we have in the nation. And to get a commitment from Representative Neal that he's going to do what he can to support Puerto Ricans and make sure that the debt gets audited. We talked about canceling the debt. We talked about healthcare parity. We talked about the cabotage laws that have impacted the island and the economy of the island for its entire history, and what we can do about that. There's various pieces of legislation currently that the National Puerto Rican Federation put together for the lobbying day, and we talked about those things. And so we are in the process now as a Boricua Solidarity movement here in Western Massachusetts to look at those pieces of legislation, look at a petition that we put together back in the summer to support what was happening in Puerto Rico, and taking a look at our agenda here in Western Massachusetts, because there's many of us everywhere, right? We are represented in every state, like someone was saying earlier, but where is our representation, right? For example, in the city of Springfield, there's only 2 city councilors that are Puerto Rican. There's never been a Puerto Rican mayor. We just got 2 representatives at the state level, but at the federal level we have no representation, and that's not just for Puerto Ricans in Massachusetts, but that's also the case, as you know, of Puerto Ricans in the island, or the archipelago. And so we believe it's important to really continue to come together. We were able to come together using social media, but we realized that the social media is only going to take us so far. That it's really important for us to really be making personal connections with people and engaging them in the process, educating people, figuring out ways in which people can participate in the process, and really refining and pushing forward a Puerto Rican agenda for Western Massachusetts.
So this is good. So we can go back and continue the conversation. Yeah?
Sure.
My name is Victoria Rodríguez, and I am the chair of this year's Springfield Puerto Rican Parade that just took place on Sunday, September 15. I'm here representing the parade, but other than that, I am a paralegal and I have my master's in leadership and negotiation as well. As my first year as chair, we've definitely taken a look at how the parade has been run in the past. It's coming on its 30th year next year, and one of the things that we've always wanted to work towards was getting a high number of volunteers for the parade because of the fact that it's such a big monster. For those of you who haven't been to our parade yet, it is one of the biggest in Western Mass for a Puerto Rican parade, and it might be in New England as well. So we really take pride in our parade. We work really hard to put it on, and we need volunteers. We need the community to come in and just be there. We do find that the community is aware of our parade, but they're willing to come out and watch or march. But when it comes to volunteering, that's been a huge struggle for us. So in thinking about that component and thinking about the questions for today's session, it does really come to education and educating our community on what there is out there and what kind of community involvement could be out there for them. There are a lot of people, once you talk to them for the first time and say, hey, I'm part of the Boricua thing, or neighbor to neighbor, or the parade, they're like, oh, tell me more. So they've never heard of us before. So educating them, and whether it is similar to canvassing in the political arena, or just, I don't know, trying to set up neighborhood meetings to educate people as to how they can be involved. One of the awesome things that we did this year was actually coordinate with the elections office, and we had voters sign up at the parade, and I believe they were able to get a lot of people to sign up to vote, to register to vote for the first time. Growing up in the north end of Springfield, and I do vote every time we have an election, it's always such a low number, and I go at the end of the day after the work day, 5, 6 o'clock, and we've only had 60 to 100 people who have voted, and there are so many. How many people are in our ward? There are 18,000 people in our ward, and we've only had about 100 votes. So it is really sad, and it's really just that we need to get the education out there. Last night we had our first ever Springfield Puerto Rican Parade Gala, and we incorporated a lot of education in there, and the educational piece was learning about the different pueblos in Puerto Rico. So we wrote little cards that had fun facts about the pueblos, and people were like, oh my gosh, I did not know this about this. I lived here and I didn't even realize that we did this. So it was really awesome for them to read about their pueblos, and then that brought in, okay, so here's the Puerto Rican parade, this is what they do. We're trying to come out more to the community. How can I get involved? So it really opened up a discussion. I had a lot of great conversations with new faces. We have a lot of volunteers who are the same volunteers, but bringing in these new faces and new people who have a lot of great ideas is something that we do struggle with, and I met a lot of them last night. So I'm really looking forward to next year as our 30th year, and yeah, thank you for having me today.
Zulmalee.
Hi everyone, my name is Rivera. I'm from Springfield, born and raised in the north end of Springfield, Massachusetts. I'm an organizer at Neighbor to Neighbor. For those that don't know what Neighbor to Neighbor is, it's almost like a social justice movement for people of color, women, working class, people who are trying to find a political home. And realize that everything around us is political, whether we want to believe it or not. And so we try to engage on a grassroots level, our communities, to fight issues that are concerning the neighborhoods. And so right now, we are currently doing census work, as well as we endorse candidates, so we're at the grassroots level, knocking on doors and asking people to have consideration for those members that have been endorsed. As well as, I also been in the North End doing a lot of art stuff all my life, and so I'm trying to see if at some point, Neighbor, we can try to figure out how on an artistic level, be able to tell our stories on stage, so that people can visually see how systematized we all are, and so, yeah. And so as of right now, we like to get our communities to also engage in the voter registration. We're constantly doing that on a yearly basis. That's what we do. We register people to vote. But right now, educating our communities about the census and how important it is what we, and getting people to commit to doing the census and also telling their neighbors about the census and their families, and educating them on how important it is. And so that's what we're doing right now. That's basically it.
One thing that I want to add is that when I was asked to speak in this panel, I thought, well, what am I going to talk about? Because I feel like, we've got some things going on in the area, but everything is sort of evolving, is in the process of developing. So I don't know that I'll talk so much about specific strategies that have been successful, but really about a story that is beginning and a story that has hope, right? And so, and I think that hope comes from our ability to connect with each other.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the theme of this panel, which is local engagement and empowerment. So it's like a big title, but how you create that? Let's use the parade, and you just mentioned a couple good examples of things that you're doing to get people enthusiastically participate and looking for new faces. I love that idea of new faces. Because
We love the old faces, but
many
the new faces are welcome.
many times, and the people that are like have gray hair here knows that sometimes you get like tired to go to the meetings that you see the same faces again and again and again. How we get new faces and how important is that to empower the brother here. So everything is going to be about you, man. So Adam Gomez is a result of the work in the community in all these different areas that we're talking here, and how we empower to elect somebody like Adam, but could be any of you in the future.
I'm not part of the panel, but I'm a member of Neighbor to Neighbor. I'm on the parade committee, and her and I work on immigrant issues together.
And we're all on his campaign.
His campaign.
So I guess he did a
It's a coincidence.
Just speak still on the things you're doing, Adam.
Because Victoria mentioned canvassing, neighborhood meetings to explain the parade. Because people from outside, when they go to a parade, they can look at the weakness of the parade. There's too much hazard, traffic, interruptions, music too loud, somebody is dressing incorrectly, that kind of thing that happen in the parades. There are parades. How many parades are in the United States?
150
Around 50 parades.
parades and festivals.
Not festivals.
And we have them all on GIS, by the way.
So, but if you look into, for me, it was like a very important book that I read from El Centro. My name is,
Which one?
the,
Puerto Rican Development Mechanism?
no, my name is,
Oh, tú dices, General Valentín?
yeah, my name is
Yeah.
Gilberto Gerena Valentín.
Yeah,
So, if you have not read that book, you should look for that book and read that book because it's so important. He's a grassroots organizer, and it goes back to when they were organizing the Puerto Rican parade in New York. And then there's some people came to him and to others and said, we cannot organize a Puerto Rican parade in New York, we need to organize a Hispanic parade in New York. And the whole conversation that happened after that, and why today, tomorrow, and every other day, we're gonna face people telling us we cannot be Boricuas first. That we have to be Hispanic, that we have to be, now the new word is Latinx, and things like that, but it's the same conversation. The same conversation is that we need to be part of something that is 40 million people, and 5 million people is just a little group. So in my, I'm sorry to take this, but when we created Boricua Vota, the pushback was from the Boricuas in Orlando. They were telling us that we have to call Mi Familia Vota, Hispanic Vota, Hispanic Agenda, and I said, but I'm not Hispanic. I'm from Bayamón. I'm from Bayamón, so I believe that people are going to be easy to call to action when they see themselves in that. So the Puerto Rican parade is something that is always good to have because people can see themselves in the parade. And the other Latinos are coming to have fun because we're the funniest and the the loudest and the best Latinos ever.
So exactly, I like that saying, call to action. We do use a lot of social media, the newspapers, we have relationships with the local newspapers around here. And it's not just recruiting volunteers, we ask the community to get involved when it comes to nominating our honorees. We want them to actually sit down and think about people who are not the same people, and nominate them. We have, the madrina, padrino, but we do have civil service ambassador, which is someone in the police, fire department, army. We also have a youth ambassador, so getting into the school system and both advertising the parade, encouraging the schools to come and march, but also think about somebody that they can nominate. So that's something that we really want from the community, and we do have a hard time getting good nominations. So we're still in the background trying to modify our strategy when it comes to what kind of questions do we ask. That's not really going in depth, but it's giving us enough knowledge to make sure that we're making a really solid decision as to why this person should be an honoree for the parade. We also do, we invite the community to come and be a part of the parade committee. We put it out on Facebook. We have interviews with community members in hopes that we can try to recruit new people onto the parade committee. That's actually a new thing within the last few years, and it's been successful. Some members, and it hasn't on the other side, but it's still new people who are coming in. They want to know about the parade, how they can be involved. So whether they join our committee or they join a subcommittee, it's still trying to get them involved. The Puerto Rican parade, we also support a lot of different initiatives that happen in Puerto Rico and also in the Springfield area. We don't necessarily take a political side, but when there was the whole governor issue happening in Puerto Rico, we did make a statement, just pretty much saying that we are with Puerto Rico. And those are just other ways where people know we're not just a parade, we are looking at bigger things. And eventually, if I could have a bigger picture of the parade, we would be doing, we had a gala, our first gala last year. That's going to continue. I would love to one day do a conference similar to this, but for Springfield, bring it into the areas where I feel that people need to be knowledgeable of what's happening in Puerto Rico. I enjoy conferences like this because I'm not right there reading the news every day. I just find out what the highlights are. So having something and an event or something going into the neighborhoods to be able to speak about what is happening on the island, so people are, I guess, more proud to be from Puerto Rico because they actually know what's going on. So that's the future, but that's what we need.
Zulmalee, go ahead.
I agree with everything she says. I'm just, when we have these discussions, I always look from the opposite end, which is the person who we're trying to engage, right? And so I always go on a deep level with them because I literally have to speak to people at the doors regularly, like, at the grassroots level, and, you know, with a lot of, we have very poor little engagement, whether it's voting, like they said, or even volunteering, or even me being able to give opportunity to people to become organizers themselves, right? Because organizing in general is one of the most hardest things to do. Like whatever it is that you're doing, when you're talking about engaging people to change their minds, to you know, to be able to move on something, right? They first have to come to the self, right? And I honestly feel like people need to really identify with who it is that they are internally. So if they feel like they're Hispanic or Boricua or, you know, whatever other ethnicity there is, right? They have to be able to identify that and relate to something. And so we're constantly trying to find that thing to relate to, even though we know what's good for people. We understand that if everyone comes together, that we'll be able to move mountains. But when it comes to the individual who's receiving it, that's the problem. The process of trying to give information to people to change everything that they believed in, then becomes becomes a barrier for us too when we're trying to engage them. And so when we're having these discussions, I always think like on the receiving end, you know, like, do people feel like they're worthy enough, right? Do people feel like they can just push just a little bit because they have so much going on in their lives that they need to understand that being civically engaged is a huge process of our life every day. And so as I try to convince people to do that, I have to honestly say that I have trouble, you know, engaging our people to do that. And so, you know, this type of conversations that I need to bring to everyone, because we're here because we have a little bit of experience, and we all care. Not to say that no one, you know, people on the grassroots level don't care. But what I'm saying is that we need to put our best foot forward to be organizers ourselves, to move our people. And so, yeah, I just wanted to say that.
I feel if we weren't raised to advocate or volunteer or anything like that, I don't know if I would be where I am if it wasn't for my family doing what they've done and what they've taught me to volunteer, to be involved, to be a part of the community, to be a known face, to be out there. So it kind of comes from generations in the past. If that's not something that you were raised doing, my mom used to bring me to meetings all the time and things like that. If it wasn't for that, we probably wouldn't be here doing this.
Right, but then it keeps us all, it's the same faces all the time.
Yeah.
So I can tell you that wasn't my background. My family is not at all involved or active in the community, but to me it's something that I always thought that was important. Like, you know, we live in a democracy, government by the people, for the people, of the people. The people need to be involved in making those decisions and shaping the government and, you know, determining our future. So I do remember different times throughout my life when I felt like, you know, I sort of needed to ask permission or to like look for someone to do something about what was going on and, you know, how we're gonna do this, who's gonna do this, where is everybody, right? And then I came to the realization that I can't just wait for somebody to do it, right? I can't depend on Adam every time to just, you know, take action. That needs to come from within me as well, right? So I really do think that's where it starts. I think that we need to be role models for other people in that way. If we're asking somebody to do something, we need to be able to do it ourselves, right? So if we're asking for people to door knock, then we need to be able to door knock. And I think that we need to take a lesson from history in terms of successful movements in the world, in our nation. And we need to start organizing our people by street, by precinct, by ward, by town, by state, in order to really impact a real change and make sure that not only do we have representation, but that we actually are being represented by people that look like us.
So let me throw a question, because you mentioned here lobbying local to impact federal issues. So how you explain that?
One of the issues that is impacting Puerto Rico, but it hasn't impacted Puerto Rico for a very long time, is the Jones Act, the cabotage laws in Puerto Rico. I'm getting to
yes,
it.
okay.
That's a federal legislation. Senators, U.S. representatives have a say in that. Puerto Rico doesn't have a senator or representative in Congress, but there's many of us that live here in the continental US, and we have senators and representatives that we can hold accountable, and we can say, this issue is affecting Puerto Rico, you need to do something about it. I'm a voter, my vote counts, right? And right now, when I was talking earlier about the Boricua Solidarity Movement, solidarity with Puerto Rico, we talked about having met with Representative Neal, not only in Springfield, but also in Washington, D.C. And Representative Neal is the chair of the Ways and Means Committee. One of the issues that's really impacting is the funds. We need funds
Well,
for
how,
parity, we need funds for dealing with the debt. All of that, those are decisions that are being made at that level, right? So if we have somebody in our community that has such close influence over what's going to happen at the federal level, we need to maximize our potential to act upon that.
so you turn on the TV and you see Ricardo Rosselló meeting with Donald Trump.
Ricardo?
Ricardo Rosselló, former governor of Puerto Rico, meeting with Donald Trump. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that Ricardo Rosselló represents any power, or how do you feel about seeing somebody else? Because there's meeting that happens all the time. It happens with the president of the university, it happens with the president of the Senate. There's important meetings happens all the time. The local engagement part is that if you have a say of who's going into the meeting or not.
Can I answer that?
Please.
So, my organization is a C3 and a C4. So we not only fight issues on the ground level, but we have the power to put people on the C4, from our C4 into office. And so what it is that while we're trying to engage our people not only to vote, right, that we're trying to engage them to actually run for these positions. Because what we're seeing is that we've been playing a defensive game where we've been trying to fight for what's right? What's good for us, what's not good for us, but we're not in these positions just yet to make the decisions on the best interest of our communities. And so now we're breaking way and getting people like Adam, right? That's why he's such a good representative right now. But we need more Adams in office, because when we get to the federal level, we want to make sure that we can trust the people that we voted in there to represent us the correct way. And even then, if our people at the ground level are not filling out even their census, right, we're losing representation. And so, I think if there was a clear answer as to how do we get people engaged, we've already had it done, right? People organize all the time, and it seems to not be working. And so I think we have to shift it to like a restorative, sustainable, thinking about economy and who's actually at those tables trying to really show face for our people. Because these laws keep coming up and they're already there, yet and still we're trying to change laws that were made way back yonder when we need to be putting new laws and policies into place to reflect us.
I think it's a big assumption though to say that because we try to engage people, that they are engaged or that they are educated, and I think that part of the problem is like that's foundational piece. I think that we often make the assumption that people do know what's going on. And I personally believe that people don't know what's going on because there is so much going on, and it's really hard to discern what's true, what's false, what's really happening, and how do I actually can participate in the process, right? What role can I play in whatever is taking place? And I think that we have a role in trying to narrow down or sort of provide information about how people can participate at the local level. Now going back to your question about how I feel about Rosselló and Trump, I personally don't respect either of them, right? So it is difficult. It is difficult to see that not just at the federal level, at the state level, but also at the local level. That the people that are making the decisions that are sitting at the table are not necessarily those people that represent my views and values.
Okay. So, the last point is important. So, we need to have the influence. So, power is the capacity of, en español, poder es puedo. Tú puedes, no puedes. You can, you cannot. So, I believe that if any politician is coming to Springfield and wants to talk to the Puerto Rican community, now we have Adam, they better check with Adam to see who's gonna be in the meeting with so-and-so that is coming from Washington. That's my point. My point is the way we really have the capacity to influence what's going on in the federal level is to gain and to run more people in the local level, so they are the power down here. So sometimes we think like so much in, oh, we need to change the president. But in reality, if we have the people that are like receiving the person at the airport, this is so stupid example like that. So you spend half an hour in the freaking car with the candidate, and they're asking you the question, you know, how is Puerto Rico? Puerto Rico is this, Puerto Rico is that. But if it's Ricky Rosselló, it's gonna give a completely different story of what is Puerto Rico about. Have you heard from people, you that work in Washington, Eduardo, you know, when we go and we talk to some people in Congress, what they tell you about Puerto Rico is totally outrageous, you know? Nobody's thinking like that. But the lobbyists that make money, that work for pharmaceuticals, those are the ones talking to them. And the idea of local empowerment is how we change that game. And when the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, whomever, make the mistake not to call you to the meeting, then they have to hear from us. You know, how come, you know, this guy is here and you didn't call me? Go ahead.
It kind of happens a lot like that, and just to be honest, and this happens in every single one of our communities. And I meant it when I said, like, not all the time we have this perception that tenemos hablar con este gallito ahí, this is the gallo, this is the guy we need to talk to. If it's, you know, Adam Gomez, what I want to reflect and move past is the fact that not only me, like I said, it's a we situation. So essentially, I'm not going to throw out names. Yeah, we have some political strengths and people that have been working in our community. So sometimes to veer off, and even on a local level, like the mayor doesn't want to meet with me, right? Won't give me a meeting. Well, all of a sudden he's meeting with los tres gallitos, those people around me, meet with them, empower them on a community level, as if I'm not in the chamber busting my ASS and trying to come and discredit the Puerto Rican agenda. And that's when sometimes when you get that problem, the power of the gatekeeper.
Right.
So those are the things that we have to move past as young people, as community. Is yes, we respect the fact that we're not the same generation that had to maneuver and strategize through those different shark tanks, right, to get to where they got to. But you built the path and you trailblazed. So I honor your trailblaze, but the fact of the matter is, because I don't have the same ideology as me, doesn't mean that I want to take you down as well. And sometimes that's the concern, is we've worked this so hard for this and we don't want to lose. And at the end of it, what are we really using? This is fictitious power that somebody else is giving you because they appoint you to a board or they appoint you to this. Some of that stuff is fiction. And what we have to put back is the powers into the people. And essentially how you maneuver through that is canvassing, is parades, is harnessing all these different pockets of people and making sure they're registered to vote or we're getting counted. And then outside of that, turning them out. Because Springfield is 150,000 people, 102 people are registered. They're just not going. We can go, we can die registering people our whole life. But if they're not going to go vote, there is a problem there. The primary, and I'm going to stop this, not my panel. The primary was on Tuesday. 3% of Springfield came out and voted in my district. The parade was on Sunday. There was 15, 20,000 Puerto Ricans out on the street.
Good morning.
Are you kidding me? That's crazy.
There's more than 50,000 Puerto Ricans in Springfield alone.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at.
Go ahead. Let's have a conversation. We have like half an hour.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, echo, a lot of the work that's being done. A lot of us focus on our individual work and engagement, and we need to build this movement together and work more in solidarity with each other. Working with the parade, doing the voter registration is great. How can we improve that? But like Adam said, you can register so many people, but if they don't know who the candidates are, if they don't know when election day is, they don't know the deadlines, it's you know, like it doesn't produce what we want. So I think going forward, we really need to start engaging more together in building that movement, where we get our people out, get them out to vote, get them engaged in the activities that will help educate them and further engage them to vote or run or volunteer or do other things that we so desperately want them to do.
I think that's why I wanted to, like, I grew up in a pageant world and a dance world, most of my friends know that. And we bring in a crowd of like 300 people a weekend. So I think that maybe telling our stories, that's what I said at the beginning, like on stage, so that people can finally come together. Because if they want to party, right, give them something to not only entertain themselves, but I want to focus on also educating our people, right? So not only giving them stuff to stimulate them, but something to move them as well. And so I don't know, it's just a new, different way of organizing I'm trying to do, because I go to the doors all the time and it's so hard to engage our people.
I have a comment and related to that comment a question, and it's related pretty much to what Edwin asked us this morning. He encouraged us to focus on something. And I want to, my perspective as an outsider of this community, I'm Puerto Rican, I am from Lynn. I remember a long time ago in the late 90s, statistics saying that in terms of health, the group that had the worst health conditions in the nations were Puerto Ricans in Holyoke and Springfield, worse than the ones in the Rio Grande Valley in Texas. We were the worst in the nation. But then this is what I want to say. I want to say that the life context of Latinos in Holyoke, Springfield look like a chapter of Dante's Inferno, like La Divina Commedia. You know, in the sense that, for instance, among the Latinos in Holyoke, Springfield, among Central Americans, South Americans, Cubans, the worst indicators are among Puerto Ricans. Among Latinos in Springfield, among race and ethnic group, blacks, whites, Asian, the worst indicators in Holyoke and Springfield are among Latinos. In the Hamden County, the city of Springfield has the worst health indicators. Hampton County has the worst health indicators in the state of Massachusetts.
Why?
He says, by health indicator, I mean to say when you create an index of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, HIV, substance abuse.
Poor transportation systems.
No, espérate, pero déjame.
We have to get to that. Go ahead.
Bueno, what I am getting to that is, so in Massachusetts, Hampton is the worst in Massachusetts, and Massachusetts is the worst for Latinos in the United States. If we are going to talk about empowered and engagement, we need to answer the question, empowered and engagement around what at the local level? We have to create a narrative and make our people own that narrative. That we are concentric circle, the worst among the worst, de lo peor, de lo más malo, you know? So if there is a sense of urgency, I ask you, Gladys, Victoria, Zulmalee, if there is a sense of urgency, to me, as an outsider, un pendejito de allá afuera, there's a sense of urgency, you know? But I don't know if there's a sense of urgency here regarding health conditions, because you live here. I mean, you live this every day, so.
Absolutely. We organize disproportionate communities in our neighborhoods. And so when you look at it like from a systemic point of view, you're looking at people who, yes, they are the working class, right? But are they making enough to even eat? Are they making enough to even get themselves healthy? We are not there yet as Latinos. And we're eating, like she said, there's, we're going to food pantries. We're literally just trying to survive. And I think that's all of America, but especially Latinos in the North End, like our pollution is extremely terrible. We have not been able to tackle that down. We have not been able to even tackle on our education. My daughter goes to school with mold on it, And so as we continue to fight these things, there is a sense of urgency. But again, I go to the communities, and because we're so used to living in these conditions, that we don't see the impact that it's hitting us right then and there until something happens. Until they see a majority of children dying from asthma, or the idea of, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's when we come here we see that there's more than what we've always had, right? Because we come from Puerto Rico, so everybody shares something, right? And so when we come here, we can provide for ourselves, whatever source we get it from, then we're good. But then when you read, right, when we wake up and we get educated and we see, no guys, this is not good for you, you deserve more. And that is what's missing in our people. So yes, people like ourselves see a sense of urgency, and we continue to preach and educate to our communities, but until they feel that need that you're talking about, I think that's where the challenge lies.
I also find it, going to different events and stuff within the last few years, whether it's outside festivals or anything happening indoors, there are organizations that do go and they're talking about what kind of services that they can help the Hispanic community. They're talking about all these things, free this, free that, free life insurance, free, but it's only that one time that people hear about it, and then they'll see them next year at the next festival. So there really isn't any follow-up when it comes to that too, and getting the word out there and getting people educated, not only for health, but finances, because that's another big thing that people struggle with in the area. Yeah, so it's a struggle.
So Gretchen and then the brother here.
Gladys, you mentioned that nobody in your family did this. I might be wrong, but I think they did do it. They might not have done it politically, but somebody showed you that you were master of your faith. Somebody showed you that you could affect change, and somebody probably showed you that there was a lot of reward in making change from others and in helping others out. And so it might not have been a political context, but that doesn't come from nothing. I think that comes from family. My question is, do you have programs? These things are learned at home or when we're young. Do you have programs for young children, for young mothers, or families, or Girl Scouts, I was a Girl Scout, that where these values are instilled in young children at an early age, and where you actually see results through action, because you can't teach values, you have to live them, and so you live them through experience. Is there anything like that to help foster that attitude in the community at an early age?
First of all, I didn't mean to imply that these feelings came from out of nowhere. I'm a strong believer that it takes a village, and I think that my story of success is a result of people that I had around me, that mentored me, that supported me. I wouldn't be without where I am today, without my community. In terms of mixing both questions that you have for building a sense of urgency, that's something that we're working with the Boricua Solidarity Movement, trying to establish an agenda that engages people in determining what it is that we need, what it is that we want, how do we want to go about it. Currently, we do not have programs that address that sort of consciousness development at an early age. We do not even have a curriculum that reflects our history and our culture in the public schools, right? So that's one of the things that we've discussed in the Boricua Solidarity Movement that we need to address.
This is a good conversation? Yes? Okay. Go ahead.
I want to pick up on a couple things that have been said out of curiosity, really. I just want to say, one of the things I think we have to reflect on is how we define engagement and who is defining engagement, right? So the three panelists that are speaking right now are coming from a specific place, right, with the work that they're doing. They're finding engagement in an interesting way. The other thing to always be mindful of is that, so we're also talking about engagement strategies that have proven not to work. That weren't designed by Boricuas, they were designed by the greater good that we're trying now to implement. So
white people.
by white people, yeah, you could use the words. So for me, and then we're adding public health issues, we're adding a lot of things to this mixed conversation, right, around empowerment and engagement. For me, for the panelists, the question is, given everything that I've just said and everything that's been discussed, even amongst yourselves, how do we prioritize what we focus in on when the city of Springfield specifically lacks a clear agenda about what it is we're trying to do over the next 5, 10 years, whatever it is, no clear agenda. How do you prioritize what you do for empowering engagement?
We need to stop asking for permission. We need to unite across communities, not just the people, not just Puerto Ricans in Springfield, but with the Puerto Ricans in Holyoke, with the Puerto Ricans in Chicopee, with the Puerto Ricans in the entire Pioneer Valley, continue to network with communities across the state and across the nation, and we need to get ourselves organized. And how we organize is something that we need to determine together.
And I also think that the
And this
communities.
is, one of the questions that we have is that how the Centro can help us with whatever is specific. That could be in a specific call by a Centro to help you gather people together to have that conversation. I'm sorry.
That's fine. I think that we also need a platform, right, somewhere to go, right, so that when there is a need for particular communities, wherever it is, whether it's Springfield, the greater Springfield, the whole Massachusetts, we need somewhere to be able to go to fight for our issues, right? There's no location that when this particular community says, you know what, the rent is too high, I can't deal with this, let's go to, you know, this place to see how we can get together, what are the needs that we need, so that we can start putting proposals together, right? We don't have a centralized location to meet, and communities are not meeting anymore together. You know, like the PTOs, right? Or the little communities that are like, you know what, I don't want this in my community no more. We have to be able to fight that. And so how can together we come to go fight greater issues if we don't even have a centralized location to be at? Like the Puerto Rican culture centers used to be around, but they're not around anymore.
Hello, at first I want to say thank you. I feel really proud of your work, and it's incredible how much you have accomplished. And to listen to you, it's inspiring. I want to ask 2 questions. The first one is the lady who talked about art, to see how systematized we all are. Who said that?
I can't see you, I can't see you, I'm sorry.
So my question is, when you talk about art, are you also integrating interdisciplinary art? And have you also included culture, agriculture in the events to, as a whole, what art means?
Well, sure, it would be, I always say there's hidden talents in Springfield, right? My mom in particular, she was a dance teacher. I grew up in a dance world, right? And so she seeded a whole bunch of younger girls who now are teachers, right? And so and it's still in the kind of, you know, it's just being jotted down as to like the idea, right? But my organizations, we fought for some, you know, like school to prison pipeline, census work. And so what I challenge some of the performers or even artists or painters is to take these ideas, right, titles, and depict it on how they feel looks like on stage. You know? So if it's like school to prison pipeline, let's say a group, the group of different groups want to show how that looks like on stage, then allow them as community to do it themselves and not have control over that. And that way it can be shown to anyone on how that perception is looked. And so I would take the different titles of the different things that we're fighting for or need to be expressed and challenge our own community to kind of come up with the idea, whether it's culture, whether it's classical routines or even just regular hip hop, right? Like whatever it is that allows them to express themselves so that I don't have no control over that, then that's
That's beautiful.
I'd like
And
to
the
bounce
second
off
question.
Second
that
question.
for the, just from the Puerto Rican parade perspective. We center our parade on culture. So it's not just, we encourage our marching groups that for the majority are local. We've had a few years where we brought in people from Puerto Rico or from New York, things like that, but they're majority local. We challenge them. They're gonna come out with a float, they're gonna come out with matching t-shirts. What does the theme of the year mean to you, and how do you express that culturally? So that's always a good thing when we're thinking about bringing performers down here. We want a típico bomba plena, we want a reggaetonero because reggaeton is a thing. We want salsa, merengue, bachata, we want to include everything. So that's definitely a big piece, a
So,
component.
they mentioned in the different presentations, participation in order to be, you're engaged when you participate in something. If not, it's just a word. If you participate, if you get involved in something, when I heard the word in English, I was like, what the hell means in Spanish? Compromiso, so you're gonna get married, I get married once. So it's something that you participate, you are part of this commitment between two people, that's engagement, I guess. So you have to create the events in which people can participate for the healthcare. It's very difficult. It's the most important thing in life. You cannot live without health. But even though it's not that important for people smoke, people drink, people do things that is bad for them, but they're not fun. But anyhow, people participate by dancing, by creating the float. The problem is how we make people understand that this could be this. So, and for that part, I'm gonna take a couple other. She's going next. She's going next. Oh, the second question. I'm sorry, but
It's gonna
to
be short.
this, I think the part of this is important. That is about. I want to throw this because I don't want to forget priorities.
And people, because you can't do things without money
It's a
and
given.
people.
People, okay. But brothers and sisters, I was talking to a guy, his name is Rubén Colón, he just got elected to school board in Volusia County. Out of the blue, we elect 5 Puerto Ricans in Volusia County, in Florida. One of them, school board. And he said, you know what I do? I change the priorities of the counties. Now you have a Puerto Rican sitting down, and now we're gonna discuss the priorities. Now we're gonna have an event for the Hispanic Heritage Month. You see? And that's about money, because this building costs money. Somebody put this building in their priorities. If we are not at the table, nobody's talking about us. So it's important to think that in order to empower us, one of us, have to be at the table. Go ahead, sister.
Okay.
Your second question.
Yes, okay. So, I kind of answered the question myself, but I think it's like circular. In order to take care of ourselves, we need to take care of each other. And because you're putting so much of yourselves to take care of each other, take care of the people, the community, you're actually healing yourself. But how do you feel? How are you guys in your self-care? Giving so much to others, are you taking care of yourselves?
I want Jimmy to answer that
It's
question.
all too much. No, to be honest with you, I am not doing a great job of taking care of myself. Something that sort of helps me heal is situations like this, right? When we're coming together and supporting each other. When I have 2 sisters next to me that are in the fight together, and I don't feel alone anymore.
I agree. Well, right now, I will be doing some self-care now that the parade and the gala is over, so I can relax for a few weeks, but I'm ready and to start planning for next year. But like she said, we see each other all the time, we're texting, things like that, so we have a support system as well, so if we're feeling
Let's keep it going.
some type of way.
It's an important
My
question.
two sons grew up without me.
Excuse me,
My
it's an
two sons
important
grew up
answer,
without
maybe
me.
she wants to answer too.
Go ahead.
Hee hee hee. So I don't do a lot of self-care, to answer your question. No, but again, when I'm in these spaces, it reminds me why I keep going. And so, when I do have some downtime, I will come back to Zen.
Thank you, let's go here.
Hi. So I'm asking this question. I'm a historian, so it's a little academic, but I think a lot of the conversations, particularly around health and education, I'm just interested in in one way, how can we have the conversation around health and education when overall, like specifically Puerto Ricans among Latino groups do really poorly in education terms. So I'm from Hartford, where I am one of 12% with a bachelor's degree of a population that is more than 75% Latino. So I'm just interested in kind of going to, I think it was Gretchen's question, how can we engage in the community even if we're not engaging in schools? Because we are missing a bunch of people in the community if we solely engage in schools, if our students are not even getting through this educational system. So I'm just interested in like, is there a space in which these organizations work with the school system or not with the school system, and how we can actually get education that is not solely through the public school system, because we have seen that it hasn't worked. I mean, a lot of the issues that we have in Hartford with housing and with poverty have been there since the 60s and 70s, and it hasn't changed. So I'm just interested in like, what are you thinking in terms of what historical changes can we expect to move forward, so that we're not just simply expecting everyone like, okay, now you're gonna go to school and everyone's gonna go to college, when that's not necessarily what's happening. So I just wanna know, how do you engage with those people?
Alternative forms of engagement, I think
Exactly.
that's what she's asking.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not engaging through traditional routes, what are you doing elsewhere, and how early can you start, because the earlier the better?
So
Yeah,
that's my
exactly.
question all the time, because, right, we're not raising, we're not raising little girls to sew anymore, right? We're not raising cooks anymore. We're not raising people or children to be productive citizens. And so I think that's how the charter schools ended up forming, right? Because an alternative to the educational system. Ideally, if we did have the money, why not educate our own kids?
Yeah.
Right? And teach them about our culture, right? Because not everyone, even in your own house, or, that tradition is slowly, it goes and comes, right?
Yeah.
Depending on who you are. And so ideally, right, we would, like, if we had spaces and the money to, like, do the after-school programs where we teach the children about their culture and their perception on how they see themselves being Puerto Rican. My daughter's an Afro-Latina, so I have to do 2 jobs at once, right? So to answer your question, I think that educating our own kids and even getting that into the school system is almost hard. We have to find the alternative, right? The space, right, to be able to the Puerto Rican culture centers, the central location for us to get here and allow for even our children, our teenagers, to come in here and be able to get that information to kind of produce out into this world. But until we do that, we could be almost like a dying culture, right? Because we don't have somewhere to go.
Can I add something to that? I go to baseball tournament, I go to domino tournament, I go to quinceañeros, I go to bodas, We need to go where people are. The canvassing, the town halls, that's a killing. People don't go to town halls, so don't try, brother, don't go to town halls. Go to El Villar and talk to people at the pool tables.
They tell me to stay with.
Because what's happening is that people are not used to that. We all that came from Puerto Rico, that's no experience in Puerto Rico of town hall.
Una
People
caravana.
don't go to those events, so you have to change. I'm sorry, brother have to, yes,
Right, I'm still thinking about what this gentleman said, and I really loved it, Jimmy, when you named white people. Really, I'm not being ironic. And I just want to say, I work here at the college, so I'm going to use education as an example, but you heard the president this morning talking about, her aspiration, our aspiration for this college. We're not there yet. We're not at the point where someone steps on this campus and feels that they're in a Hispanic serving institution. We're so far from that. You heard the commissioner talk about putting equity first as a priority for Massachusetts, but you also heard him talk about how we're at the bottom right now, right? So there is so far to go, and so there's individual change, there's institutional change, there's systemic change. The institutions and the systems were designed by white people, essentially for white people. Those systems cannot change without the input and the advocacy that you're talking about right here. No matter how much an individual or an institution or a system may actually want to change, they will not get it right without your input. So I just want to say palak.
Go ahead.
I sit here thinking about how the emphasis here has been about engagement. The question really for me is engagement for what purpose? The brother here talked about the kind of social indicators for the Puerto Rican people in this country, which are absolutely horrendous. Outside of the Native American community, the Puerto Rican community has the worst indicators of all kinds: education, employment, incarceration, morbidity, mortality, mention it. So if there is that strong sociological correlation between poverty and all the negative social indicators, why are we not talking about engagement for the purpose of ending poverty?
Well, to answer your question, that's what the Boricua Solidarity Movement is about, right? It's about building, organizing people, and our focus is to attain political, financial, and social justice and equity, right? And so we could sit here and say that we've got it all figured out, but we don't, right? It's something that is starting, it's something that it's a movement that is going to take time to develop and establish, but that is where we're headed.
Anyone else? Go.
So all day I've been hearing some great things from panelists and from participants. One of the things that struck me in the last talk was, second to last talk was we learn from our mothers. Okay, it was brought up again here. You learn that engagement from your family, your community. I did not get that 100% from my family. I got that from programs. YMCA had a youth program. HEC had Upward Bound. Girl Scouts. You know, there's Girl Scouts. There's things like that out there, yes. But to hear that the Massachusetts schools now want to build equity, to build partnership with groups like the Boricua Solidarity Movement who want to build culture in communities, I think it would be amazing if the school systems would allow free rental for spaces for after school where these organizations, which are countless, they're around, we're everywhere. And it's hard to find spaces like we've discussed here. This school costs money. This space costs money. If they would partner or have some sort of sign-up program where, 501c3s or 4s can come in and educate and have an after-school program that they provide with volunteers and staff and engage the youth, because that's really honestly where we need to build from. We can engage at all levels right now, but it's the youth that is going to lead by example their children. And if we want to build this movement, which we're trying to do, we really need to build these partnerships and to think outside of the box and to make systemic changes now, We have Girls Inc. in Holyoke, great program. It empowers the girls in the greater Holyoke area, mostly girls of color. We have Palante in Holyoke, which I just learned about last year, and is an amazing program. It's a restorative justice program. and they teach about the Puerto Rican culture and other cultures. They teach about circling, they teach about mediation. They've reduced school dropouts and many other issues Holyoke schools were facing and been expanding. I live in Chicopee. I would love it to go to Chicopee. But we need more programs like that. And without advocates, without people learning how to teach, like I'm so happy to hear about the ambassador program HEC is providing. Without, building these teachers and having mentorships. We're all congratulating Adam, he's amazing, and I think he deserves all the recognition. But we need someone to shadow Adam and to see the struggle and the work he does, some youth and more Adams, everybody out there, so that they can be empowered to take office, can learn the ropes, and to make changes, because they're going to be an outsider and be able to see with that 2020 vision what they want to do when they get
I think also, can I just answer, and just piggyback off that, because I think we're all there, right? Like, we want these programs, right? But going back to these two gentlemen's question, like, what are we all moving forward on, right? And I think once we get into these positions that a lot of us are in, that once we, because we know, right? We know that there's a need for the community. I think we need to start, I think we need to start organizing around those needs, right? I think, and organizing our small communities to start figuring out what their self-interests are, and understand that that there's a greater purpose for even them being in that place, if that makes sense. Because we can't really move forward, right, if we don't really know where we're going. Right? And if we don't have that purpose, right? But we know something's messed up. We just don't know what it is, right? And so, and I think that's the gray area. I think all of us, even as Boricuas, like even going back to like, are we white, right? Are we black, right? Census questions, right? Those little check boxes, right? Like like even trying to figure out who we are, but as a group trying to learn systemically where we're at, right? While these programs are into place, we need to be able to identify where we're gonna go, because we don't have that. And although we want all these things, they're great, they're needed, but if it's just moving to not really go into fit to have an end game, so I think when I go back, I've been thinking about like a more just transition, right, and restorative for my community. So I think I'm gonna continue to dive a little deeper into that idea of like, even when we go back to the what equals solidarity, like, where are we going? We're having those conversations, but and are we really the representation for our communities?
Well, thank you very much. Let me close with this, Orlando. So we need to create opportunities for people. And for that, we need to run for office, win, take control of budgets, make sure that we create the programs, empower our business people, their friends. And when people open a bakery in Orlando, I always go to them and say, make sure that you hire as many Puerto Ricans as possible. Don't try to save a couple dollars by hiring somebody else. Give healthcare to people. So when we invest in our people, the money stays in our community and we can help each other. We need to create an institution that people want to work there. I want to work in the community center. I want to work in this place. I want to work in IVA. If people in Boston want to work for IVA, Inquilinos Boricuas en Acción. Those kind of programs, I want to work in at Centro. You see, that's the kind of thing that we need to do for each other. Keep helping. I keep looking at Jose Luis, and Jose Luis did something last year. He went and worked with Vota in Iniciativa Comunitaria, dealing with homeless people in Puerto Rico. So one way of engaging people is when you ask people to go with you and touch somebody that is in need. So sometimes people talk about homeless, but they have never seen homeless in their life, okay? But because they're invisible for them. So let's try to take care of each other, help each other, and be out there with you and people like you, and let's take this state by storm, like we're doing in Florida. Thank you.